All right, let's dive into one of the biggest, most elegant, and honestly, most overlooked technologies on our entire planet. And we'll get into the incredible race that's on to finally catch up to it.
Think about that for a second. The solution to one of our hardest problems. It's right outside your window. It's quiet, it's super efficient, and it has been running flawlessly, well, since way before the dinosaurs. For the last half-century or so, we've been trying to build our own version.
So, to really understand this race, first, we've got to appreciate the champion we're trying to beat. And believe me, this isn't the photosynthesis you learned about in high school biology class. Nope, this is a planetary-scale engineering marvel. I mean, just look at this resume. The scale of what the humble leaf has accomplished is just staggering. Every single breath you take, every meal you've ever eaten, all the fossil fuels we've burned for centuries, it all comes back to this one single silent chemical reaction that's happening right now in every green leaf on the planet.
And this is the secret. At the very heart of it all, deep inside the leaf's machinery, there's this tiny machine made of just 4 metal atoms. This is the engine. And what it does is one of the hardest things you can do in chemistry. It tears water molecules apart using nothing but sunlight. And that's the trick scientists have been desperately trying to copy.
Okay, so why are we so obsessed with copying this tiny engine? Well, that elegant solution inside the leaf is the key to solving a massive problem we're facing right now. We talk a lot about electrifying everything. Cars, homes, you name it. But what about the things you just can't plug in?
We're talking about huge industries here. International shipping, long-haul flights, making steel and cement, all of this stuff. You add it all up, and it's about 1/3 of all the energy the world uses. And you just can't run these things on batteries. The physics just doesn't work. The batteries would be way too heavy, and they just don't pack enough punch. Get this, a single container ship can burn through 300 tons of fuel in just one day. 300 tons! Now imagine trying to replace that with batteries. You'd need so many batteries that they would literally fill up the entire ship. There'd be no room left for the cargo. So yeah, it's a total non-starter.
And this really gets to the heart of it. We don't just have an energy problem. We have a fuel problem. See, electricity is awesome for our grids and for electric cars. It's just moving electrons around. But for those giant ships and planes, you need molecules. You need dense, stable, portable stuff you can pour into a tank. Fuel. Exactly what a leaf makes.
So this modern quest to build our own artificial leaf, well, it didn't start with some big, grand strategic plan.
Nope.
Like so many great breakthroughs in history, this whole thing started with a complete accident.
It all kicks off back in 1967. A grad student in Tokyo, Akira Fujishima, is in the lab, and he sees something that should be impossible. He's got this electrode, he shines a light on it, and bubbles start appearing. He then spends the next 5 years just trying to prove that what he saw was real, trying to convince his very skeptical advisor, and maybe even himself.
And the setup for this potentially world-changing discovery? It was almost laughably simple. We're talking a beaker of water, an electrode, and some titanium dioxide. That white powder that's in sunscreen? That's it. And all he did was shine a light on it.
The result, though, was profound. Just like a leaf, that simple beam of light was splitting water into its basic parts: pure hydrogen, the cleanest fuel in the entire universe, and oxygen. Without even trying, Fujishima had accidentally created the world's first artificial photosynthesis system.
So that one accident kicked off what has become a 50-year scientific marathon. And somewhere along the way, the goal changed. It wasn't just about copying the leaf anymore. No, the goal became way more ambitious, to actually build a better one.
And man, it turned out to be incredibly hard. I mean, that tiny little machine in the leaf had, 3.5 billion years of R&D? It's delicate, it's efficient, and it even repairs itself. Trying to recreate that combo of efficiency and toughness in a lab, well, it proved to be almost impossible.
But then, a huge breakthrough came out of Daniel Nocera's lab at Harvard. He had this brilliant idea. He thought, instead of trying to beat nature at its own game, why don't we just team up with it? And he called his amazing hybrid creation the Bionic Leaf.
Okay, so here's how this Bionic Leaf works. It's a really smart 2-step process. First, a synthetic part, a man-made catalyst, uses sunlight to split water and make hydrogen.
Then, specially engineered bacteria come in and do what bacteria do best. They basically eat that hydrogen and use it to turn CO2 from the air into a storable liquid fuel. It's like a perfect partnership between our engineering and nature's biology.
And this is where the race gets really interesting. Look at this. In the lab, the Bionic Leaf is hitting about 10% efficiency when it turns sunlight into fuel. Now compare that to a natural plant. Even the fastest-growing crops on Earth only average about 1% efficiency. So for the very first time, we are officially outperforming the leaf. Wow.
So what does all this mean for the future? Where is this all heading? Well, this technology really points towards two very different but equally powerful paths forward.
All right, vision number one is all about industrial scale. Think massive solar fuel farms spread across the world's deserts. They just soak up sunlight, pull water and CO2 from the air, and churn out carbon-neutral liquid fuels. And the best part? These fuels could flow right into the tankers, pipelines, and engines we already have.
So that's the big, centralized solution. But what about all the places the grid will never reach? What if the most revolutionary part of this isn't just about powering the world we already have, but about finally empowering the parts of it we've forgotten?
I mean, think about it. Right now, there are 700 million people on this planet who live without reliable access to electricity. The old fossil fuel system, with all its massive, centralized power plants and pipelines, it was never going to reach them. The economics just didn't add up.
And that brings us to the second vision, which is much more personal. A solar fuel system doesn't need a grid. It doesn't need pipelines or giant tankers. Just imagine a device, maybe the size of a refrigerator, that can provide all the fuel a family or a small village needs, using nothing more than the sunlight and water they already have. That is what real energy independence looks like.
And let's be really clear about this. The fundamental science is done. It's here. The big questions are no longer if this can work. The questions now are how. How do we make it tough enough? How do we scale it up? And how do we make it cheap enough to compete? The challenge is officially moved out of the scientist's lab and onto the engineer's factory floor.
You know, for 3.5 billion years, the leaf has been the undisputed champion of solar energy. But after just 50 years of us trying to figure out its secrets, it feels like we've hit a real turning point. We didn't just learn from the leaf, we may finally be learning how to actually compete with it. The great challenge now is to take this incredible breakthrough out of a beaker and a lab and scale it up to help power our entire world.